Tidy your kitchen with this game-changing DIY, a 3-tiered fridge caddy designed to turn the dead space around your freestanding fridge into a practical storage solution. It's functional and convenient storage for your spices, everyday kitchen essentials, and kitchen towels right where you need them. Just rack it, stack it, and pack it. Oh, there's actually a twist. I was actually challenged to only use 2 power tools for this DIY. So let's hit the workshop and let me show you how I built this fridge caddy and which power tools I used. Now, as you can see, it is an easy design, all made from a few meters of 22 by 94 millimeter PAR pine timber. That is for the frame. A few 6mm dowel rods for the shelf front supports, and a short piece of 19mm dowel rod for the bottom towel rail. Now, we all have different sized fridges, so this is a DIY that you need to adjust based on your dimensions that you're going to be using for your fridge, and of course, what you want to store in your fridge caddy. Let me show you how to measure, mark, and cut. Start by measuring the dimensions of the fridge, and as the fridge caddy rests on the top of your fridge, we also need to be aware of any top mounted door hinges or possible air vents that may be on top of your fridge. This is obviously model dependent, so the maximum width that I have to work with is 420 millimeters. This caddy, 344 millimeters, which also allows space for the top handles. Now, when working out the height of the fridge caddy and knowing that the bottom of the caddy is for a kitchen towel rail, I need to ensure that the length of the caddy is at a height where I want the towel to hang. So for this fridge, I'm going to measure a height of 720 millimeters. Based on this fridge, I need 2 pieces for the sides at 720 millimeters, 3 shelves at 300 millimeters, as we need to deduct the timber thickness of the sides, which is 22 millimeters each. Lastly, we need 2 pieces for the top handles, which I'm going to make half the width of the fridge plus 94 millimeters, which is the width of timber. That gives us 360 millimeters. So let's measure, mark, and cut our first length at 720 millimeters. And when cutting, I recommend measuring and cutting each piece individually. Rinse and repeat for all the pieces that you need. Measure, mark, and cut. I've got my pieces cut. Let's get this out of the way. Give it a quick clean. There we go. I can now bring out my first power tool, the Iron Hell drill driver. Now, why did I choose this? Well, as the name suggests, it's a tool that I can use for both drilling and driving in screws. But before we can drill, we need to mark where we need to drill for the shelf mounting screws, the shelf front dowels, as well as the bottom towel rail. Now, the easiest way to work this out is to lay your timber pieces on the workbench. There we go. And then grab the contents that you're going to be storing. That's what we're going to be using as a template to work out the height of the shelf. Shortest one at the top, place your shelf. Middle one, place your shelf. Bottom one, place the shelf. All we need to do is to make a mark, both on the left and on the right hand side. There we go. Now, I'm just gonna quickly pop those to the side. Now, while we're here, I wanna work out where to place the shelf support dowel rods. For that, I'm going to use one of the dowel rods that I've got. Basically going to place it on top of the shelf, eyeball where the lowest dowel rod is going to sit right above the shelf. And then so that I've got an equal spacing, just going to place it there, mark for the second dowel rod and mark for the third one. As you can see, I've got 3 at the bottom. The middle, I'm going to have 2. So I'm going to do the same there as well. Mark for the second dowel rod. Top shelf also has 2 dowel rods. These dowel rods are going to be offset 5 millimeters from the edge of the timber. Now, as I need to drill a 6 millimeter hole for the 6 millimeter dowel rod, I need to measure 8 millimeters in. So let's round it off to 10 and then mark the center where the hole is going to be. The last hole that we need to measure for is the bottom 19mm dowel. That is going to be for the towel rack. Now the placement of the dowel needs to be low enough to allow the hand to fit over the top of the dowel. So find the center of the timber profile and score a line. Then place your hand where the lower shelf sits. Then place the 19mm dowel rod below your hand. Eyeball the placement over the pencil line. Then mark on the side of the dowel where the lines intersect. This is where you need to drill a 19mm hole, so ensure that it's at least 15 to 20mm from this marking to the edge of the timber. I'm also going to use my square to extend the lines for where my shelf sits. That's all my measuring and marking done. We are now ready to drill. So instead of carrying the measurements across to the other side of the timber, running the risk of the holes not lining up, simply clamp the two pieces together with a piece of scrap wood underneath. Now stacking them, ensuring that they sit flush, is going to make sure that we drill both pieces at the same time. Having the piece of scrap wood there is going to, 1, prevent blowouts, and number 2, prevent me from drilling into the workbench. Now, as these are 6mm dowel rods, I need to drill these at 6mm. Take care to keep the drill perpendicular to the timber, as these need to be as straight as possible. For the towel rail, we need to use a 19mm spade bit to accommodate the 19mm dowel. Lastly, the holes for the shelves. And as I'm going to be using 4 by 50mm screws, I'm going to drill a 3mm pilot hole. 2 holes for 2 screws in the center of the pencil lines we marked earlier. That's all the holes drilled in the side pieces, but I'm going to use a countersink that is also supplied with the Iron Hell drill driver kit to countersink the 3mm holes for the shelf screws. A countersink hole is a shallow profiled hole that provides space for the screw head to sit below the surface of the timber. Just take care to ensure that you drill on the right side or the outside of the side timbers. Next is to drill pilot holes for the arms. And to do that, use a piece of scrap wood with the same profile. Line it up with the edge and score a line on the inside. And then position it in such a way that you find the center point, and then score a line on the left and on the right hand side. As I did before, clamp these 2 pieces together with an offcut of timber, and then drill 2 3mm pilot holes through both timbers before using the countersink on all the holes. For this DIY, I've also been challenged to only use 2 power tools. So I chose a drill driver set and the Iron Hell multi-tool. Now a multi-tool, as the name suggests, is a tool that can be used for multiple uses, from sanding to cutting, just by changing the oscillating head attachment. Now a drill driver, again, as the name suggests, is a tool that I can use for both drilling and driving in screws. Now my timbers are cut, and as you can see, all the necessary holes are drilled. Before assembling, I'm going to give all these timbers a light sanding, as it's easier to sand it now than when they are assembled. Now I'm also going to be staining these timbers with a water-based stain and sealer. But before that, I'm going to wipe all the timbers down with a damp rag. Now this moisture, it causes the fibers to stand up and makes it easier to sand, as I don't want to apply the water-based sealer, which will then cause the fibers to stand up at a later stage. To sand, I'm using my Iron Hell multi-tool with a sanding head attachment. So I'm starting with an 80 grit to aggressively remove any rough edges from the drilling, imperfection, and pencil lines, followed by 120 grit to get a super smooth finish throughout. The sanding is done. We can now start with the assembly. Get a flat edge of sorts, place it along your workbench, and then place the 2 side pieces front side facing down. Now we do know that the front side is the one with the holes for the front shelf dowels. Now what the straight edge is going to do is that it's going to keep your ends lined up, and it's also going to help with your positioning. Then apply wood glue to each of the shelf sides, and and then place them between the two side pieces. I find it easier to use two clamps to hold all the pieces together. Once everything is aligned and square, secure the shelves with 4x50mm screws. Then wipe off any glue that squeezes out with a damp rag. Next are the handles. Again, apply a bit of wood glue between the mating surfaces and then fasten with the 4x50mm screws from above. Now at this point, you can choose to fill all the countersunk screws with wood filler. It's a personal choice. Some people like to see the hardware, which gives it a bit of a chunky look, while others prefer a uniform finish. I'm choosing to fill the holes, and once dry, we'll give the wood filler light sanding to get the uniform finish. Now before fitting the dowel rods for both the towel rail and the front shelf dowels, I'm going to stain the caddy shelves, the sides and the handles with my go-to stain and sealer-in-one, the Fine Earth Woodworks in the Mboya color. When applying Woodworks, you need to work fast as the stain soaks in almost immediately and any run marks need to be worked out quickly. Woodworks is a stain and sealer in one, and being water-based, it's a pleasure to clean. While that dries, I'm going to give the 6mm and 19mm dowels a quick hand sanding, and for that, I'm just going to use an old sanding disc from the sander attachment. The caddy has dried, so it's time to fit the dowel rods, armed with the Iron Hell multi-tool with the wood cutting oscillating head attachment. Push a 6mm dowel rod through a hole, and before pushing through the hole on the other side, place a drop of wood glue on the dowel rod, so as you push the dowel into the hole, the wood glue is pulled in with it. Giving the dowel a slight twist will also help spread the glue. And trim to length with the multi-tool. If necessary, give the ends a light sanding and a touch-up with the Woodworks stain. To seal in and preserve the decorative wood finish, I'm going to apply a clear matte coat of Rust-Oleum Ultra Cover spray paint. Now this will keep the caddy clean from those greasy fingers in the kitchen, and it simply extends the lifespan of the stain finish. The lacquer has dried completely, and look at how the two-tone effect of the dowels versus the stain just pops. Now the final step before hanging, or rather attaching the caddy, is to attach some silicone rubber pads to the back of the caddy, under the handles, and maybe one at the bottom as well. Now what this is going to do, it's going to help prevent any direct contact and possible scratching of the fridge. These pads have a non-slip surface, so will also help reduce any movement of the caddy. DIYs are easy with the right tools and materials, and Builders sells all your DIY essentials either in store or online at builders.co.za. For more videos like this, check out the blog on the website. It's due day to rack it, stack it, and pack it. Get to Builders, get it done.